could be the impact caused by this doubling of those steel and aluminum tariffs.
Yeah, a significant increase for consumers heading their way.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump's increased tariffs on steel and aluminum are now in effect. The levies now sit at 50%.
What if I told you that Trump's big steel tariffs could actually help Canada turn greener and richer at the same time? Mark Carney has a $22 billion plan to flip the script, and trust me, Trump isn't taking it well. Quick favor before we move on. If you appreciate this content, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. Believe it or not, more than 92% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. It's free and only takes a second, but it means the world to us. So, did you subscribe already? Great, thank you so much for your support. Now, back to the video. What happens when a president moves to save American jobs, but ends up tossing a wrench into the economy instead? Enter Donald Trump and his bright idea to slap a 50% tariff on steel and aluminum imports back in 2018. He called it a matter of national security, because apparently, Canada, yes, maple syrup-loving, politely apologizing Canada, was a looming threat to the U.S.
President Trump's raising tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from 25% to 50%. Yeah, they're now in effect.
Suddenly, one of America's closest allies found themselves shoved under the political bus, blindsided by a trade decision that made zero friends north of the border. The effects were immediate and messy. Canadian steel and aluminum industries scrambled to adjust as prices skyrocketed overnight.
Causes problems with our access to the United States, but much steel around the world will be looking for new markets and will be targeting Canada.
Whether it was construction, automotive manufacturing, or even canned food production, industries felt the pinch almost instantly. Over in the US, the shocks weren't subtle either. Sure, some steel plants were temporarily optimistic, but the ripple effects started piling up fast. Ford reported a massive $1 billion hit to its profits thanks to higher material costs. GM wasn't far behind, and even Musk's Tesla struggled. Apparently, it turns out shiny tariffs don't exactly make for shiny cars when materials cost an arm and a leg. And let's not forget craft beer enthusiasts. Aluminum can prices soared too. Imagine explaining to your buddies at the bar that your favorite IPA costs more now, courtesy of Trump trying to flex his political muscles. To add insult to injury, what was supposed to be a patriotic move to bring back American jobs ended up putting American workers on the chopping block. States like Ohio and Pennsylvania, key battlegrounds Trump couldn't afford to lose politically, actually faced job risks in steel-dependent industries that couldn't keep up with the inflated prices. Because here's a little economic reality that Trump seemed to miss. When industries pay more for materials, they either pass on those costs to consumers, cut back on investments, or lay people off. And spoiler alert, it's usually not the first option. Among those loudly complaining were U.S. manufacturers who felt like Trump had shot them in the foot while patting himself on the back. Many Midwestern manufacturers simply couldn't compete with the soaring costs, leading to factory downsizing and, in some cases, closures. It's almost poetic how the very people Trump claimed he was helping became collateral damage in his misguided trade war. And all of this came as Trump puffed his chest about winning the trade game. Yeah, sure, winning, the same way your buddy with $20 in his bank account claims he's investing after spending it all at the slot machine. But as the drama unfolded, there was a consistent target of Trump's tantrums: Canada, America's main supplier of steel and aluminum. Trump painted them as the villains of the story, claiming they had taken advantage of the U.S. for too long. It created a diplomatic headache. Not that subtlety has ever been a tool in Trump's kit. Canada, meanwhile, wasn't about to sit back quietly. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau declared the tariffs unacceptable, but words could only do so much. Enter Mark Carney, a man not known for playing soft. Behind the scenes, Carney crafted a plan, and let's just say it didn't exactly involve sending Trump a bouquet of apology flowers. The immediate Canadian response to the tariffs made a statement: fine, You want to tax us? We'll tax you right back. But this wasn't some knee-jerk reaction. While Trump's approach felt like someone hitting a piñata blindfolded, Canada's move was laser-focused. Carney orchestrated a $22 billion counterstrike. Yes, billion. The retaliation would target specific goods like U.S. steel, aluminum, and other exports that Canadians suddenly found themselves paying way more for. And it wasn't just limited to metals. Agricultural products got thrown into the mix too. Trump might have thought he was flexing, but Carney's move hit where it really hurt. What makes Carney's strategy even more interesting, though, is how he managed to combine retaliation with long-term planning.
Prime Minister Carney and President Trump, but I think at this point we now need to put some action into place.
See, unlike Trump's seat of the pants policies, Carney's $22 billion wasn't just about getting even. It included investments in green technology, like green steel, which aimed to push Canada into the future of sustainable industry. So, while Trump was busy building an economic wall that no one asked for, Canada was building a bridge to the industries of tomorrow. If you ever needed a more delicious irony, there it is. Trump's trade tantrum might have helped birth a green revolution, just not in his own backyard. Bet he didn't see that one coming. But let's zoom out for a second. As the US struggled with rising costs, layoffs, and outrage, Canada's retaliation started to look less like a scolding and more like a wake-up call. Trump's attempt to protect US industries was unraveling at home, and Carney's plan was throwing fuel, or maybe recycled biofuel, on the fire. The tariffs didn't just sting, they exposed cracks in Trump's strategy, leaving American workers and industries questioning just how much winning they were actually doing. And this is where the bigger picture comes into play. Carney wasn't just playing defense, he was positioning Canada as a leader on multiple fronts. While Trump stumbled through the chaotic tariff fallout, Carney was ready with a bold counterpunch that could hit Trump politically, economically, and perhaps most importantly, long-term. Canada wasn't merely reacting, it was future-proofing while Trump was still focused on the past. And just like that, the stage was set for a far more dramatic clash. How do you hit back when your closest neighbor suddenly decides that your steel and aluminum are a national security threat?
What could be the impact caused by this doubling of those steel and aluminum tariffs?
Yeah, a significant increase for consumers heading their way.
If you're Mark Carney, you skip the angry tweets, gather up some economists, and draw up a $22 billion master plan to hit the US right where it hurts. The result? A counterattack so precise it makes Trump's tariffs look like a game of darts played blindfolded. Carney's strategy was twofold. First, fight fire with fire, or rather, tariffs with tariffs. Canada slapped its own taxes on US goods coming north of the border, targeting a very specific list of products that would make American industries squirm. We're talking steel products like plates and semi-finished metals, aluminum cans, and even agriculture staples. These tariffs meant Canadian buyers, businesses, and consumers alike would now have to pay as much as 50% more for certain American imports. Sure, it stung Canadians too. No one's thrilled to shell out extra for a roll of aluminum. But the move wasn't about making life harder for Canadian businesses. It was a pressure tactic aimed at the industries south of the border, the same ones that had lobbied Trump into introducing tariffs in the first place. Carney's message? If we're going down, you're coming with us. The second part of the plan is where Carney showed he wasn't just thinking about tit-for-tat retaliation. He used this crisis to pivot Canada towards something bigger, investing in green technology. Remember Trump's promise that the steel tariffs would bring American manufacturing back to its glory days? Carney flipped that narrative by proposing Canada's Green Steel Accord, a $4.8 billion Canadian dollar initiative meant to revolutionize its steel industry into a low-carbon powerhouse. Trump wanted steel jobs. Instead, he accidentally gave Canada a head start on the Green Revolution. Oh, the irony. The Green Steel Accord didn't just sound good in press releases. It came with actual funding. The initiative bankrolled projects designed to future-proof Canada's steelmaking while burning a lot less carbon in the process. Take ArcelorMittal Dofasco in Hamilton, for example. Thanks to this program, they plan to swap their older blast furnaces for electric arc furnaces, which are cleaner and more efficient. Over in Algoma Steel, located in Sault Ste. Marie, they started experimenting with hydrogen direct reduced iron, a fancy way of saying they were cutting emissions while keeping production high. And then there's Quebec, where Rio Tinto Alouette began work on an inert anode project to further reduce their environmental impact. Each of these facilities wasn't just upgrading for Canada, it was stepping into a future that the US seemed too distracted to notice. But before you think this was all sunshine, maple leaves, and renewable energy, let's not forget the risks involved. Slapping retaliatory tariffs on such a massive scale could have easily spiraled out of control. A full-blown trade war wasn't out of the question, and let's face it, Canada punching above its economic weight might not end well in a prolonged bout with the behemoth next door. The US economy dwarfs Canada's, meaning there were limits to how long they could sustain the back and forth. Critics were quick to point out that while Carney's plan was daring, it also felt like a high-stakes gamble. Could they push hard enough to make the US rethink its strategy without crippling their own economy in the process? Of course, in true Carney fashion, he wasn't just looking at the immediate impacts. He focused on the long game. That's what made the Green Steel Accord borderline genius. It wasn't just a defensive measure. It was an economic springboard. Sure, the upfront price tag of 4.8 billion Canadian dollars was steep, but this wasn't about short-term wins. These investments put Canada on track to lead some of the fastest-growing industries of the future, like electric vehicles, which rely heavily on lightweight aluminum and steel.
That 75 other manufacturing jobs are lost because of the higher inputs into making these goods and services.
While the US let its steel industry fumble around with outdated processes and higher prices, Carney was laying a foundation for Canada to dominate the green economy. Here's where it all ties together. Trump's tariffs forced Canada to retaliate, but instead of just playing defense, Carney used the moment to redefine the rules of the game. Not only did the tariffs hurt US industries by adding costs to their exports, but they also inadvertently gave Canada a reason to rebuild and modernize its own industries at lightning speed. It's almost Shakespearean, really. Trump cast himself as the savior of American steel, only to end up accelerating Canada's shift into becoming a green tech powerhouse. So while the US steel industry struggled with factory closures and soaring material costs, Canada started to solidify its reputation as a global leader in sustainable manufacturing. And that's where things get exciting, because green investments aren't just about environmental responsibilities anymore. They're about power. If Canada's steel industry can position itself at the forefront of sustainable tech, other countries are going to notice. That could mean new trade partnerships, more demand for green materials, and a big step toward long-term economic independence. But Carney's $22 billion revenge didn't just ruffle feathers in Washington, it had global consequences. By raising tariffs and going green at the same time, Canada sent the message that they didn't just want to recover, they wanted to leap ahead. If Trump thought he could dictate trade rules without consequences, Carney's plan was the perfect reminder that even the smallest player can pack a punch if the timing's right and the strategy's sharp.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump's increased tariffs on steel and aluminum are now in effect. The levies now sit at 50%.
The idea might sound far-fetched, but when global powers lock horns, someone's always waiting in the wings to take advantage. And right now, China is watching America's escalating trade tensions the way a cat watches a mouse. It's poised, calculating, and ready to pounce.
Was creating havoc and disruption as well. So this sort of doubles down the urgency, if you will, and accelerates the job losses.
By targeting U.S. industries with its $22 billion retaliation plan, Canada might unintentionally hand Beijing a chance to expand its influence even further. Let's rewind for a moment. Canada's move to slap tariffs on U.S. steel and aluminum wasn't just a tit-for-tat decision. It created actual holes in America's supply chains, especially in states heavily reliant on foreign metals. Picture steel plants in places like Ohio or Pennsylvania, suddenly grappling with fewer raw materials and soaring costs. The American Iron and Steel Institute even predicted that U.S. blast furnace efficiency could crumble if the flow of Canadian steel dried up. Disruptions like this mean one thing: job losses. And we're not talking about a handful of layoffs here and there. Supply chain shocks can totally shut down factories.
Foreign prices on steel are increasing. U.S. prices of steel will increase because U.S. producers have no incentive to keep prices low. So
factories in Ohio and Pennsylvania, where workers supported Trump's America First rhetoric, are suddenly staring at the economic fallout of his tariffs. That's what you'd call the boomerang effect, and it's swinging back hard. All this chaos at home leaves the U.S. way too focused inward, which is exactly what Beijing loves to see. With America stumbling to fix its self-imposed mess, China's over there making quiet moves to cement its global trade dominance. Beijing is cutting steel deals across Central Asia, using trade corridors like the Eurasian Economic Union to ship its excess goods. Picture Kazakhstan becoming a pit stop for Chinese steel on its way to Europe. This isn't just about selling more metal, it's about China gradually muscling its way into global markets left fragmented by Western infighting. And every time America blunders a trade policy, China capitalizes. If Trump's tariffs keep widening the rift between the US and its closest allies, China gets exactly the breathing room it needs to expand its industry without serious competition. Talk about irony. The guy who wanted to bring jobs back to America might be driving business straight to Beijing instead. Now, Canada isn't some pawn in all of this. It's been making its own strategic moves. Mark Carney's decision to push for green investments alongside those retaliatory tariffs wasn't just smart, it was a game changer. Canada doesn't just want to tax US goods, it wants to position itself as the go-to country for sustainable industry.
About this, particularly from the steel and aluminum industries as well as their labor unions, all of them raising concerns about what this is going to mean.
That $4.8 billion Green Steel Fund, it's already turning heads. ArcelorMittal Dofasco's electric arc furnaces in Hamilton, the Chrome Reduction Project in Quebec, or any of the other major initiatives under the Green Steel Accord. These aren't just domestic improvements. These are billboard signs saying, "Hey world, do you need low-carbon steel? Come to Canada." This is a huge deal because sustainable manufacturing isn't optional anymore. It's the future. More and more countries are introducing carbon tariffs or favoring trade with partners that follow green practices, and Canada is positioning itself as the poster child for this movement. Unlike Trump's backward obsession with outdated production methods, Carney's plan looks both forward and outward. By evolving its industries faster than the US, Canada could end up securing global partnerships that America doesn't even see coming. Ironically, Trump's tariffs, which were supposed to safeguard US industry, are helping Canada leapfrog into global prominence. But let's circle back to America for a second. The political stakes here are massive. Think about the states being hit the hardest by Trump's tariff fallout: Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan. These aren't random places. They're swing states that helped Trump win in 2016. A few factory closures, rising prices for consumer goods, families losing their steel industry jobs. Those stories stick, and they don't make for great campaign ads. It's one thing to promise to save American jobs on a debate stage. It's another to be blamed for killing them through inflamed trade wars. And if those workers start feeling abandoned, well, Trump's voter base starts to crumble right when he needs it the most. Meanwhile, Canada is watching Trump's chaos unfold like it's the plot of a daytime soap opera. The more Trump's policies backfire on US industries, the stronger Canada looks by comparison. Carney's strategy hasn't just boosted morale at home, It's earning Canada new respect on the international stage.
We thought at that point, so I guess we always know there's a risk of unpredictability with the president, but did we expect this? Absolutely not.
Green steel investments, combined with retaliatory tariffs against the US, are making Canada look like the adult in the room. And unlike Trump's short-term approach, Carney's plan builds bridges to new trade opportunities rather than burning them down. Here's where it all comes full circle. China advances globally, Canada innovates, and the US risks alienating allies and losing support where it matters most: swing states. Trump's steel tariffs might go down in history as one of the most counterproductive trade policies of our time, not because they didn't bite, but because they bit the wrong person. Factories aren't being saved. In some cases, they're even closing. Meanwhile, Canada's industries are gearing up not just for survival, but for dominance in a greener, more sustainable world. And China? China's shipping steel to Europe while America figures out how to clean up its own mess. So while Trump tweets about fake wins and claims he's protecting American jobs, the reality is playing out like a slow-motion train wreck. Factory workers in Ohio and Pennsylvania see layoffs. Canada gains international leverage. And China? It's quietly smiling from the sidelines. Trump's tariffs were supposed to protect US jobs, but instead, they've become his political boomerang. Instead of reviving industries, they've strained American manufacturers, led to layoffs in key swing states, and opened the door for Canada to shine economically. Canada, under Mark Carney's strategy, turned retaliation into reinvention, using green investments to future-proof its economy. The irony? Trump's obsession with outdated trade policies might end up making Canada the star of the green energy game. It's proof that bad politics can accidentally be the best gift to your rivals. Sometimes the best revenge is thinking decades ahead.